All right, welcome back to Fantasy Files 1054 or FFX54 for short. This is going to be the Week 6 wide receiver rankings. We're going to do tiers 1 through 3, and each tier is going to have 12 teams in it. And I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it, fly through these so we can get this out to you before this Thursday night barn burner. All right, first on the list, no surprise, Cooper Kupp. You're going to continue to see this for probably the entirety of the season unless there's an injury. He's the hyper-targeted wide receiver 1. Enough said. Moving on. Behind him is Stefan Diggs. The reason Stefan Diggs is 2 this week is because it's going to be the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. And if you guys remember how that game worked itself out last year, it was just an absolute show on the offensive side of the ball, both sides. So you really want any part of this offense that you can get. So Stefan Diggs, if this game is going to be an 80-plus point game combined, Stefan Diggs is going to have plenty of opportunities to not only get in the end zone, but put up some stats. So Stefan Diggs is in a really good situation this week to succeed. Right behind him, we have Justin Jefferson versus the Miami Dolphins. Now, the Miami Dolphins are a relatively good matchup at 36.9 fantasy points per game. Again, Justin Jefferson is that top-tier wide receiver. If it wasn't for Stefan Diggs' matchup, he would be number 2. But Justin Jefferson, number 3. Jamar Chase is at New Orleans, which this is going to be a more difficult matchup because I'm assuming that Marshawn Lattimore is going to shadow Jamar Chase all over the field. But Jamar Chase has honestly gotten off to a pretty slow start this year when it comes to just putting up fantasy points other than his Week 1 performance. So we're looking for Jamar Chase to get back on track along with his entire Bengals defense. So look for that this week against New Orleans because even though Marshawn Lattimore is going to be that cornerback 1 against Jamar Chase, the New Orleans Saints as a whole are letting up 37 fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. So there should be plenty of room to succeed, especially if T. Higgins is still dealing with that injury, which it sounds like he probably is, which is why we're going to have him ranked pretty low in this video. So Jamar Chase is set up for success. Look for Jamar Chase to have a more last year-esque performance this week and show us why Jamar Chase is a top-tier receiver. Right behind him, we have Tyree Kill going up against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the Minnesota Vikings are kind of a whatever matchup, middle of the pack, and it's Tyree Kill. I'm not too worried about the quarterback situation here because even though it's the third-string quarterback starting, or at least he's gearing up to start this week, I think Tyree Kill is one of those players that the quarterback doesn't need to do a whole lot. He can throw a 5-yard slant, and Tyree Kill can take it 90 yards. So even though the matchup is a little bit rough, even though the quarterback situation is a little bit rough, I think Tyree Kill is still in a position to succeed based on the talent. And I honestly think that the third-string quarterback is going to hyper-target Tyree Kill as a safety blanket. So look for Tyree Kill to perform this week as our number 5. Debo Samuel is probably the most exciting matchup, maybe aside from Marquis Brown in this top tier, because Debo Samuel not only is a pass catcher, but he is also a runner. And when you're going up against the Atlanta Falcons, who are just porous and everywhere on the defense, Debo Samuel is in that prime position to just take over this game and give us a really high-score game with the matchup. So Debo Samuel, number 6. Right behind him, we have Mike Evans. Mike Evans against Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't love the matchup, honestly, because I think all the points that Mike Evans is going to put up is going to be in the first half. I really do think that this game kind of gets away from the Pittsburgh Steelers, as the Buffalo game did last week. And I think that Mike Evans' opportunities will probably be more limited in the second half while they're up. I think they'll still run the score up, but I think that it'll be at the hands of Rachaad White and Leonard Fournette more so than Mike Evans. But again, Mike Evans, top-tier receiver. You're not thinking about it. You're throwing him in your lineup, and you're just hoping for the best. So even though the matchup isn't super exciting, it's not going to be that competitive offense on the other side of the ball. Mike Evans is still going to be in a perfect spot to give us some production this week while going up against a Pittsburgh Steelers defense that is ranked last in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers at 47.6. So Mike Evans, you're starting him. Marquis Brown, I think this is probably the most exciting matchup just because Seattle is so bad on defense and they are so good on offense. They usually can keep up to a certain degree. As I'm saying this, though, it's looking like Seattle's holes are in their in their run defense. Because if we look at the lineups.com fantasy points allowed to running backs, Here, I'll show it to you real quick. If we look at, this is against running backs, by the way, and I'm just showing you that the Seahawks here are 28.4 fantasy points allowed per game to the running back position. Because if you look back at the Seahawks games, they have allowed tons of points on the defensive side of the ball, and it's usually a high-scoring game. But it's looking like that is all at the hands of the rushing defense. 28.4, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 worst in the entire NFL. But then when you go over to wide receivers, it's a little bit interesting. Ranked 4th best overall, only allowing 28.4 fantasy points per game. That being said, we're talking about the Arizona Cardinals, who run the most plays in the entire NFL. Their pace of play is very high, and we see that in the targets that are getting spread across their entire offense. So even though the Seattle defense is looking pretty good, I kind of went back on my statement there after getting surprised by the ranking of the Seattle Seahawks defense. But my ranking still stands. Marquis Brown is going to get 12 to 13, 14, 15 targets in this offense because they're going to have to play catch up with the Seattle Seahawks. It's going to be a neck and neck game, and Marquis Brown is going to get most of the targets while this is the last week that DeAndre Hopkins is not going to be there. Marquis Brown will be that bona fide number 1 receiver. Look for Marquis Brown to do really well this week. A.J. Brown is a very tough matchup here. The Dallas Cowboys have not allowed more. They haven't allowed 20 points on the defensive side of the ball yet this year. But the thing to be noted here is that the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboy matchup is going to be a divisional rivalry. I think that a lot of these stats kind of get thrown out the window in rivalry matchups. A lot of times some weird things happen out of character. So A.J. Brown is, they're on a very good offense. We're going to figure out this week who is the real deal. If it's going to be the Philadelphia Eagles or if it's going to be the Dallas Cowboys, because the Dallas Cowboys have been one of the best defenses in the entire league, and the Philadelphia Eagles have been one of the best offenses in the entire league, and honestly one of the best teams in the entire league at that. So we're going to see who's the real deal this week, and I think A.J. Brown will be in a position to produce, even though the matchup is a little bit difficult. A.J. Brown, number 9. DK Metcalf, I honestly can't believe that he's all the way in tier 1 at this point. We collectively as a fantasy football community had very low expectations compared to years past for DK Metcalf. And honestly, they're proving us wrong. The Seahawks are looking like an average to decent offense. DK Metcalf is getting his touches. Tyler Lockett is doing really well. And Ken Walker is going to be in a good position this week as well to succeed. So regardless of our expectations leading into the season, the Seahawks are a fine offense, and DK Metcalf is going to produce like he has in the past 3 weeks. DK Metcalf, number 10. CeeDee Lamb is kind of in a similar situation as A.J. Brown just because of the same matchup. And I say that just because with this divisional rivalry, honestly, it's a wild card game in the sense of I don't know how this game script's going to go. It's a very new team on both sides of the ball, especially with Cooper Rush in there at quarterback. But one thing we do know is that CeeDee Lamb has been producing every single week while Cooper Rush has been in the quarterback position for the Dallas Cowboys. So I think this matchup could have 60-plus points scored, and CeeDee Lamb being that wide receiver 1 is going to be in that spot to succeed this week. CeeDee Lamb, 11. Cortland Sutton, he is going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. Let's see where they're ranked. Yeah, Chargers are looking like middle to low tier up against the wide receiver position, allowing 37.3 fantasy points per game. So not a huge deal. I know Russell Wilson is dealing with that lat injury, I believe, a partially torn lat. But Cortland Sutton is going to get all of those targets because we also know that Melvin Gordon is dealing with an injury. We know that Jerry Judy's been underproducing, and we know Javonte Williams is out of the offense. The tight end situation is a mess. So even though the injury is kind of lurking in the background for Russell Wilson, Cortland Sutton has been producing nonetheless with plenty of targets. So regardless of all the scares that Denver Bronco fans have, I think Cortland Sutton is still going to succeed in a fantasy aspect. So look for Cortland Sutton to produce a wide receiver 1 type performance this week. All right, in our tier 2, we're going to have Mike Williams kick us off again. Mike Williams continues to find himself in this fringe wide receiver 1, top tier wide receiver 2 range. And that's because Keenan Allen is struggling with that hamstring injury. Even if Keenan Allen comes back this week, I'm not banking on him getting an entire full workload. So I think Mike Williams has one more week to produce. And we're going to go ahead and mark Mike Williams at this point as a trade target. I only have the trade target button, but I am looking for trading Mike Williams away from your team. You can hold him one more week and let him get that spike week, because I do think he gets 15 to 25 points again. He's been really solid since Keenan Allen has been out week 1. And I think he repeats that this week. But after this week, look to replace him with a more reliable wide receiver. And I honestly wouldn't even hate you going and trading for Keenan Allen for Mike Williams. So look for that in the future. But this week, Mike Williams is set up to succeed, even though it's a difficult matchup. Mike Williams at number 13. Right behind Mike Williams, we have Michael Pittman Jr. I honestly don't know how to feel about him this week. Or honestly, rest of the season. I have went ahead and bought him low in a couple of my leagues because I think he is hitting that rock bottom. Everyone's worried about Alec Pierce because Alec Pierce did out-target him last week. But I think that this Indianapolis Colt defense figures it out to a certain degree. I'm not sure that they're going to be a top-tier offense at all this year. But I do think that they figured it out to a certain degree. We have Jonathan Taylor coming back. So I think Michael Pittman in this matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars kind of gives us a performance that we've been expecting this entire offseason and kind of mimicking that week 1 production. He's been really falling flat since then. But if you think about it, he's been injured a few games. Jonathan Taylor's been injured a few games. We're going to have them all back this game. Look for Michael Pittman to get back on the horse and give us a pretty decent to very good fantasy production. So Michael Pittman is going to be right behind Mike Williams at number 14. Behind him, we have Tyler Lockett. Again, I could put Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf back-to-back because I really do think that both of these players have a very good chance of producing on a very high level. And if you look back at their production in the past few weeks, they've honestly both put up very nice fantasy point production values for your team. If they're on your team, you've been happy with what they've been doing. And honestly, that's pretty rare, especially coming from a quarterback like Geno Smith. But at some point, we just have to buy in. I'm not a believer in Geno Smith long-term, but they continue to produce. Tyler Lockett's one of those guys I never can buy into. But at the same time, if he's going to give us 10 targets a game and 20 points, at some point we just got to buy in. So Tyler Lockett's going to be our number 15 overall. Speaking about buying in and not believing in the situation, Amari Cooper, it's kind of the same deal where, like, we had Amari Cooper ranked so much lower for the entire offseason. And honestly, up until this point, I've been a non-believer. Like, I've been trying to convince myself that he shouldn't be producing. And he puts up that 20-point game, 20-point game, dud, 20-point game. He is that wide receiver. He's still Amari Cooper. So regardless of how I feel about Jacoby Brissett as a quarterback, Amari Cooper's in a really decent spot to succeed this week against the New England Patriots. So go ahead and throw him in your starting lineup and feel pretty confident doing that. Right behind him, we have T. Higgins. T. Higgins is this low, and honestly, I don't know where to put T. Higgins because we put T. Higgins pretty high last week, and he kind of fake played. He played for like the first play, and then sat the entire rest of the game. The coach said that they were waiting. You know, if there was a scenario that they needed him, they would have put him in. I don't know what better scenario there is to put T. Higgins in the lineup than when you're in a close game against a good offense, and you're trying to win a game in the fourth quarter. That's just me. If I was a coach, I probably would have threw him in, but I'm not. So I'm really not too sure where to rank T. Higgins because I don't know how much that ankle, or I think it's ankle. I'm not sure how much that's still affecting him. So I'm going to put him in this mid-tier. If he's fully healthy, then we're talking a tier 1 receiver. But I don't think he's coming back full steam this week. I think he will play, but I think he'll be on more of a limited snap count. So T. Higgins, I'm not going to be surprised if he has a spike week, but I'm not confident in him either just because of what he gave us last week. I'm looking to see him play a full game, and then I'll feel more confident about him again. But until then, T. Higgins is going to be 17. Krisha Kirk is in the most difficult matchup in the entire league. The Indianapolis Colts are only allowing 25.1 fantasy points per game to the entire wide receiver core on the opposing side. And Krisha Kirk has had a couple duds in a row now, but I'm not going to pull back completely from Krisha Kirk just yet. I do think that the Jaguars are trending in the wrong direction. But I honestly think that they hit kind of a valley last week. I think they bounced back a little bit in this divisional rivalry. And Krisha Kirk is going to have a better fantasy production than he did last week. So look to throw him in your starting lineup at number 18. Jalen Waddle. I think the third string quarterback playing for the Miami Dolphins is going to affect Jalen Waddle more so than it's going to affect Tyree Kill. I think that Tyree Kill is that easy number one read, so he's going to get the targets from the backup quarterback, and Mostert's going to get a lot of touches. But I think Jalen Waddle is kind of going to be the odd man out in this new kind of pull it together and hold it together type of offense. So Jalen Waddle is going to be stepping back a little bit for the next couple weeks, but this is a massive trade target. Let's not forget that Jalen Waddle is a top 10 receiver when Tua is in that offense, and Tua will be back. This is a contending team. They're playing it safe. If he gets a concussion again this year, you're not seeing him again for the rest of the season. But I do think he comes back. We're getting weekly updates, so that means that he's trying his best to get back. They're going to play it safe, but while Jalen Waddle is underproducing with these backup quarterbacks, look to trade for him, and then when Tua comes back, you got a top 10 wide receiver. Right behind him, we have Gabe Davis. Kind of everything we said about Stefan Diggs. There's going to be plenty of plates at the table for everyone to eat. Gabe Davis is going to he's going to be a beneficiary of this matchup, and he's coming off a massive game. I think he had 170 yards on 3 completions and 2 touchdowns, which is just absolutely insane. Gabe Davis is kind of that the definition of a boom or bust player. But in this matchup specifically, I think Gabe Davis does very well. So look for him to be a good wide receiver 2 option this week going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Gabe Davis, number 20. Chris Godwin, again, great matchup. He's getting back on the field, which is great. But the issue is that he's still marked as questionable every single week. We know that hamstring injury is still bothering him. He's going to get, I think it's the 2 stat lines of the weeks that he has played. He's gotten 10 targets and 6 targets for a very, solid double-digit fantasy production game. I think that if he's feeling pretty healthy, he can drop 20 or 30 points out of nowhere. So we're definitely starting him, especially in this matchup. But the injury is still kind of looming, and I'm a little bit nervous about it. But you have to start him. And we're not going to know how bad that hamstring is. Sometimes players ride that questionable designation for the entire year and they're fine. And then sometimes it's actually legitimate and it's bothering them and you can see it on the field. So we're going to kind of monitor Chris Godwin a little bit, but if he's feeling healthy, he's going to be that wide receiver 2 option. So look for him to be the number 21 receiver overall. Deontay Johnson kind of worked his way back into my tier 2 just because even with the new quarterback, Kenny Pickett, even with George Pickens kind of blooming, getting those 8 targets he got last week again, we still saw Deontay Johnson get 13 targets. Now, Deontay Johnson only had 5 receptions on those 13 targets, but that's why this makes him a trade target. If we're going to continue to see him getting 13 targets, that production and efficiency is going to go back up. So I do think Deontay Johnson is someone you could trade for on the very cheap right now, to be honest. Sell the owner of Deontay Johnson that George Pickens is the new guy. He's been out targeting him. He's been out producing him on the fantasy level, but I think Deontay Johnson is still getting those opportunities, so he has that opportunity to get into the end zone and have a 20-point game at any given week. So Deontay Johnson is going to be our number 22 matchup, or our number 22 receiver on the week. Devonte Smith, again, this is a very good offense, a very good defense they're going up against, but Devonte Smith was the Heisman-winning wide receiver from Alabama. He's had those massive spike weeks this year, even with A.J. Brown on the field. He outproduced A.J. Brown last week. So Devonte Smith, we're starting him every single week, and he's that wide receiver 2 option now at this point. So look for Devonte Smith at number 23. Terry McLaurin is probably going to be one of the last weeks we see him as a wide receiver 2, but he is in a very favorable matchup against the Chicago Bears. This is going to be very ugly, and that's going to be tonight, actually. So I'm trying to get this out for you in time, but you're probably starting Terry McLaurin anyways. Again, bad matchup. No Jahan Dotson. Terry McLaurin, number 24. All right, I'm just going to throw these up, and you can kind of check them out, and I'll touch on a few key points. First being Jacoby Myers. We're starting him every single week at this point. We have to. The targets are insane. He's the poor man's Deontay Johnson. He's getting all the targets. Even if Zappy is still in there, Jacoby Myers is easily startable player. He's been producing on a very high level. So Jacoby Myers is going to be someone that we want to throw in the lineup just because of the volume alone. Alan Lazard has overtaken Romeo Doubs for me slightly, but again, this is going to be a bounce back and forth type of thing weekly. One's going to eat more than the other, but they still are the top two options in an Aaron Rodgers-led offense. I think that they fell flat against a very good defense in the New York Giants, but, we're still starting them, but I'm not as confident as I was last week. Moving down to Juju, I wouldn't normally have him this high, but I do just, again, because of that matchup, so we can start Juju this week. And then going all the way down to DJ Moore, this is our last chance. If you're a DJ Moore owner, you're crossing your fingers and hoping that PJ Walker is the answer. The coach is fired. Hopefully they're making some changes to make DJ Moore, at least give him a little bit of return on your investment, because so far this year he's had 0. And just cross your fingers and pray. But you guys can see the rest of the receivers. I'm trying to go ahead and speed through this and get it out for you in a 20-minute video. But again, I wish there was a better matchup to watch tonight, but we have the Commanders and the Chicago Bears coming up here any minute. So you have to tune in anyways, but these are our wide receiver rankings. You can go ahead and set your lineups or make some trades based off of these. And you got to remember, we're also on those bye weeks, and they're going to continue and get way worse. So thanks again, everyone, for the support, as I say every single video. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, grab some food, watch some Thursday Night Football. Peace out.